happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
Wake up, Andy. I'm Ann Northrup. Back from a week off. Thank you, Rob Shooter, for sitting in.
And in the news, there were no charges against Donald Trump or Jussie Smollett, but neither is exonerated either.
When was the last time you heard those two names used in the same sentence? A lot lately.
Yes.
The United States House will hold its first hearing of this term on the Equality Act on April 2nd. Don't hold your breath for the Senate, but maybe.
And it's going to be live streamed. A trans man was denied a hysterectomy on the operating table by a Catholic hospital.
Sweet. There has been progress in Michigan and Wisconsin, but trouble in Texas and Tennessee.
An actress who was set to play a lesbian role was fired for past anti-gay statements.
That sounds like something we should debate.
Okay.
And then we'll debate whether Harvey Fierstein should be playing a female political icon, as he is scheduled to do.
He's writing the show. And I'll review the new Broadway revival of Cole Porter's Kiss Me Kate with Kelly O'Hara.
All right, do we have an opinion on Trump's, the Mueller report?
We haven't seen it.
Well, that is true. We haven't.
You know, there was a Times op-ed I read today about how we got sucked into this. And I have to say, now I say this, I have to say, given all the reporters who were on this story and who had broken so many aspects of it, it kept, I get a bad feeling that he wasn't going to come up with the smoking gun. But the problem is, it's all been out there in the open for so long. As somebody said about Trump, if he had said privately on the phone, tape recorded, saying some of the things that he said in public, they would have impeached him.
Well, a girl can dream. Yeah, I mean, I at some point lost some interest in this because I thought it was beginning to look like a gotcha thing. And not that I don't think he hasn't committed any number of crimes, real crimes.
Right.
And I certainly want to see the report. But I think the strategy is not to talk about the past, it's to talk about the future. And what the Democrats have to focus on is what...
Healthcare.
Among other things, but they have to focus on what they're going to do to make people's lives better. And even if you caught Trump in 1,000 different crimes, the fact is his supporters don't care. They're not going to impeach him, and they only care about what they think he is doing for them.
Right. Well,
they're deluded about that, but or some of it, but move on, please.
Let's move on to someone else whose charges were dropped this week. All 16 charges against Jussie Smollett, you saw this, were dropped by the state's attorney. And he comes out of this maintaining his innocence, say, I never told a lie about this. The police chief and Mayor Rahm Emanuel come out and Emanuel called it a whitewash, which was
charming
a
choice of words. Yeah.
And he invoked Matthew Shepard as a real victim of hate violence. And
that's controversial.
Yes, and now Jussie, yes, that's true. Now Jussie did forfeit at $10,000 in court costs. He didn't try to get his money back.
Well, in bond.
Well, he forfeited it. Look.
And they gave him credit for having served 2 days of community service by looking at all his sort of community involvement.
So the prosecutor said, I didn't have any problem with the evidence or the police investigation, and he said this did not exonerate him, but he just didn't see Jussie as a threat to public safety. But federal law enforcement are still investigating the letter that he got, which was full of racist and homophobic slurs.
Once again, as we've been saying ever since this came up, we don't know what really happened, and no one is telling us what really happened. We have Jussie saying he hasn't told a lie. We have the other side saying, oh, he's totally guilty, even though we're not prosecuting him because it wasn't a violent crime and we have better things to do. I like the fact that, what's her name on The View, the lawyer, Sunny Hostin, keeps saying, you know, the Chicago Police Department does not have the best record. I agree with you, Sonny. They do not,
true.
either for gay men or people of color.
Well.
So I'm not counting on their analysis.
All right.
Nor am I. And this whole thing about, you know, because he's a celebrity, we wasted so much time and money on this. Well, you're the ones who chose to waste so much time and money because he was a celebrity.
And there were a lot of problems with the police leaking stuff, with the hospital leaking stuff,
Yeah.
and so it was a mess.
All right, back to the Trump administration.
All right.
So, talking about what is going on now and will go on, the last injunction against the trans military ban has finally been lifted. That's 4 out of 4. So now the Department of Defense is going to put this ban into effect on April 12th.
Now, you can stay if you're already out, but you can't if you come out after that. You know, it's now going to become a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation. It's awful. This is disgusting.
Well, a House resolution passed because the Democrats now control the House, condemning the trans ban in the military.
Yeah, they had 187 co-sponsors, all Democrats.
And an actual bill to prevent the ban, to repeal it, or to put into place legal trans service in the military is pending. Not very hopeful about that. The hope really lies still in these 4 court cases that have been brought. Each of them is still pending and will work its way up through the system. All this fight has been about for the last few months is whether the Trump administration gets to put the ban into effect while those cases are pending. But those cases are pending, and people could still win the right to serve in court. And we will certainly continue to follow those cases.
And you probably noticed this week that the president issued an executive order requiring colleges to protect free speech or lose federal funding. And he's going to leave the enforcement to federal agencies that award grants. But of course, will gay and lesbian and transgender students be protected when they speak out on all these colleges?
Yes.
Now,
what constitutes free speech?
Now, Liberty University, now of course private colleges are going to be held to a different standard on this. They can get to set their own rules, even though they feed on the public trough.
Right.
But Liberty University says they denounce censorship.
Well, let me ask you something. They're either publicly funded universities and colleges or private colleges that get federal funding.
Everybody gets federal money.
Either because their students get federal grants or they get research grants or whatever. But does this mean that anyone who wants to speak at a college gets to speak? There's no ability of the institution to bring in speakers or not?
Look, these things arise.
If I want to go...
These things arise when usually a fascist speaker is booked, and then they're canceled.
Right.
But do you have to book them in the first place? You know.
Yes, do you?
Well...
Can I book myself at NYU tomorrow?
Read the executive order. Betsy DeVos, meanwhile, won't say whether LGBT kids should be protected from discrimination in schools.
She is a piece of work. Did you see her talking about the special...
Yeah.
This was Mark Pocan, the out-gay congressman from Wisconsin, questioning her about whether she believed in non-discrimination rules for sexual orientation and gender identity, and she kept refusing to answer the question.
She said what? What?
Did she?
No.
You made that up.
I did.
But I did see, they didn't show that in news clips, but what they did show was him questioning her about cutting funds for the Special Olympics.
Which would be the funds they want to cut for, of course this is the Trump budget, which is absurd, but the amount of money spent on the Special Olympics would be covered by 4 trips to Mar-a-Lago. 4 trips to Mar-a-Lago.
And then, of course, there's the Health Care Act. And like every other progressive, I think this is a big gift to us that Trump has announced he is his DOJ is going into the court case on the side of those who want to completely get rid of Obamacare.
The interesting thing is that HHS and even William Barr, the Attorney General, said, no, the way we do things is we're defending the law. It's the law. We're the defenders of the law. And then Trump said, no, you're not.
Well, that's also not necessary.
Because he wants everything that Obama ever did to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Well, I hope people hold him accountable for coming up with something better, which I have no expectation he will do.
Now, SAGE, for our elders, they brought 120 LGBT elders and allies to the Hill in Washington to lobby for the Equality Act and for the Ruthie and Connie LGBT Elders Act. And if you want to support that, go to, I'll give this in the email, but it's sageusa.org/still-out. I think I did get that control room, but anyway, it'll be in the email. You can see how you can support that.
One footnote to something you talked about with Rob Shuter last week, the out Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar's visit to Vice President Trump. Pence, excuse me.
If only.
Yes. And there was a picture of Varadkar and his husband, boyfriend, partner.
They haven't gotten married yet. I think they're planning to.
With Pence and a woman. And as you pointed out, that was not Karen Pence, who absented herself.
Well, she was working at the anti-LGBT school.
I think she could have made an exception for St. Patrick's Day. But who did step in was Pence's sister.
Yes.
Which I found telling, because if it really didn't matter that Karen Pence was not there, they wouldn't have bothered to replace her, but the sister was there. That's who you saw.
Well, maybe
the picture.
Karen Pence wanted the sister to keep an eye on Mike.
With Varadkar and his boyfriend, anything could have happened. The new rule from Karen will be, you may not have dinner alone with a woman, and you may not be alone with gay men.
And how about that Donna Brazile? She was fired from CNN, and now she's joining Fox News, saying she's excited to join the honest and passionate debate at Fox News about our future. And she was confronted in an interview about moving on by The New Yorker on the racism and the lies at Fox, and she says, everyone does it. And that's what she said.
I would go on Fox. I would yell at them all day long. I'd get fired in 2 days.
She is a pathetic closet case.
She is. In New Mexico, there is an ICE facility holding people seeking asylum, and a letter has come out to the administration saying that ICE is abusing gay and transgender migrants in that setting. I don't expect action from the Trump administration on that, but the conditions sound pretty horrible.
Interesting statistic about hate crimes, which are on the rise, but they pointed out this week that there has been an increase of 226% in the places where Trump held campaign rallies in 2016.
Nice. All right, some notes about the Democratic presidential candidates.
Okay, I was going to mention the Supreme Court, but...
Go ahead.
All right, yeah, they've still made no decisions on Title VII and Title IX cases. Our friend, Professor Art Leonard, says they may be working on what are called summary per curiam dispositions, meaning that they don't make a formal big, long decision or write a big opinion about it, but they all sort of agree, but they have slightly different views on it, and they put it out that way. We just don't know.
It's a guess.
Right. And so those cases are still on the calendar to be considered, as is the case of the guy in South Dakota.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
First, on the Democrats. First, Pete Buttigieg in an Iowa-only poll showed up in third place with 11% of the vote.
Behind Biden with 25% and Bernie at 24%.
But ahead of Kamala and 10%. Corey and all of those other people.
Everybody else is not really registering. But he was at zero, literally, in other words, under 0.5%, and now is at 11%.
But that's just in Iowa, and nationally he's still at 1%, along with a lot of the other candidates. But he is... what they say about this showing in Iowa is that it shows the public is more open-minded now, that having elected Trump as an outsider and an predictable candidate, that they're more open to someone like Buttigieg as openly gay, as a mayor of a relatively small city, and that his performance is giving him that boost, and they're open to that. Now, we're a little disappointed in a couple of things that Buttigieg did this week by condemning Chelsea Manning and saying...
Well, he said he was not in favor of the pardon that President Obama issued on that.
Well, Chelsea, meanwhile, had served 7 years, which was longer than anyone else for that action of releasing classified information.
And he was saying, I'm talking as a soldier who was out there when the stuff was being released. And
well, Chelsea was a soldier too.
I'm not, look, we've been down with Chelsea on this show forever. And he also was asked about Chick-fil-A, and he tried to walk up the middle, and he said, I don't like their politics, but I like their chicken, and so that means you're eating there. And he says, can I be a bridge between the gay community
Probably
and Chick-fil-A?
Not. It's been tried.
No. And they're still giving, their owners are still giving tons of money to things like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes,
yes.
right-wing anti-gay groups.
Yeah, while having told us that they were going to stop doing a lot of that. Biden, on the other hand, is now talking about his part as chairman of the Judiciary Committee for the Clarence Thomas hearings, where Anita Hill was so run over by several buses simultaneously.
Well, he wouldn't allow a lot of people to testify on her behalf on the story.
Right.
And he was, if you look at the tape, he was always very angry during it, and it was weird. He did vote against Clarence Thomas, but he's trying to, he's running for president, he's trying to clear the decks on his past sins, of which there are several.
Look, we all have past sins. All of us,
yes.
Me certainly included. But here's what I don't understand about these guys. They come out and they say, well, it was a different time, I regret it, blah, blah. They act as if they were operating in a vacuum, and no one knew no one could have known at that time that they should have treated Anita Hill better. Meanwhile, millions of us were screaming at the Senate Judiciary Committee, let the other people testify, listen to Anita Hill.
And he was the chair, and he didn't do it.
And that is what kills me, and voting for the Iraq War or whatever. And I want to say to these people, you say that you've learned your lesson, you say that you regret what you did, but what evidence do we have that you, who didn't listen to millions of people trying to tell you this at the time, are going to listen to people in the future?
Well, Jennifer, this is not a diversion. Jennifer Lawrence did a 12-minute tape on television. I said, you got to watch this. And she talks about the fact that all these issues where 80% of the country want this, but no matter what we want, whether it's Medicare for all or stop the
non-discrimination law,
all that, the Congress or the legislatures always vote for maybe 30% of what we want, but never all the things that we want. It's just it's the way of the world in this, and politics. It's outrageous, but there it is. And they don't reflect the will of the people.
A lot of that is money. A lot of that is the lobbyists who are, and the people who they think are going to get them reelected. And that's really all they're paying attention to.
I mean,
how am I going to get reelected?
New York is making a lot of reforms now that we have both houses of the legislature, but now they're stalling on some things. And you saw what happened in New Jersey on marijuana.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's a drum.
Well, just this specific thing of why people think we should give them credit for regretting their past when they've shown no evidence that they are willing to listen to the people is astonishing to me.
Yes,
so if you run into any of these candidates who have said things like this, please say to them, how can I believe that you have changed anything when you wouldn't listen to people back then?
Yeah. Let's not be too hard on them. We might have to vote for them. No, we raise all these things.
Well, you can get a chance to look at them in an LGBTQ plus focused debate that they're going to do at UCLA under the joint sponsorship of UCLA and HRC on October 10th.
Mark your calendars. Now, they did some sort of a forum years ago on this, too.
Where they interviewed people individually, because there weren't as many candidates.
Right. Well, we don't know how many are going to be left by that time in
Melissa
October.
Etheridge was one of the questioners.
Yes, I remember.
Remember?
I do remember.
I think I still have the VHS tape of that.
our friend Jackie Rudin reports that drag queens have started doing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, calling it a sign that she has arrived. And AOC tweeted that she would like to be a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race.
Get in line. All right, so the House Judiciary Committee, under the chairmanship of our Congressman Jerry Nadler, will on April 2nd, next week, hold a hearing on the Equality Act. It has a gazillion sponsors in the House, but we have to get some Republican votes in the Senate if we want to pass this thing, not to mention talking Donald Trump into it.
And circle April 2nd on your calendar for a variety of reasons, and you can that hearing will be live streamed. But if you live in Chicago, you got to vote for mayor, and you've got a lesbian candidate, Lori Lightfoot, versus this other woman, Preckwinkle, 2 African Americans. And in Wisconsin, you've got to vote on the Supreme Court of the state, and there is a progressive candidate, Neubauer, versus a right-winger.
And I'm not sure this qualifies as news, but the Family Research Council is out in force lobbying heavily against the Equality Act, bringing a lot of quacks out to testify about all its sins.
But the NAACP heartily endorsed it.
Yes.
All right, the Democratic National Convention is going to be in Milwaukee, and the executive director of that is going to be Joe Salmonese. Remember him? He was the former head of the Human Rights Campaign up until about 2012. He has been the chief executive of Emily's List in the past, and he was the transition chair of Planned Parenthood after Cecile Richards left there last year.
Another indication of the Democrats wanting to hold on to our votes. I'm in favor of that. All right. In Texas, the San Antonio City Council, unlike Pete Buttigieg, has rejected Chick-fil-A having a place at their airport because they are anti-LGBTQ.
But the state remains rather backward. Republicans are advancing a bill to let state-licensed professionals refuse to serve LGBTQ people if they have a religious reason. And this passed committee 7-1, and they got 1 Democrat vote on that as well.
In Michigan, here's the reason we want to elect LGBTQ plus people to office. You may remember that we elected Dana Nessel, lesbian attorney, as Attorney General of Michigan. Well, she has proceeded to settle a case that the ACLU brought about adoption agencies serving all people, including same-sex couples.
Well, the legislature passed a law saying that these religious groups could discriminate and still get money, and it was an ACLU case. So she said, "Oh, you're suing us? Fine. I give in."
Yes.
Here we go.
Well, she said that there's something in the law that says, yes, you can't, you can discriminate on religious grounds, but that doesn't apply to agencies that have state contracts.
Yes.
Thank you, Dana.
The shameless Roman Catholic Church is not giving up on this. They intend to continue to pursue it so that they can both discriminate and get your money.
All right, let's talk about the.
Well, the other. I mean, another positive development is what happened in Wisconsin this past week. Governor Tom Evers won a court case, and he was able to remove 82 appointments of Scott Walker that were last-minute appointments.
Nice.
And the judge in the case said that the December session that the legislature had violated the Constitution. Now, Republicans are still in charge there. So in the legislature, so they may try to come back at this, but he immediately got rid of these 82 people.
Well, also good in Maine, where we have a new governor, having gotten rid of, what's his name? Paul. Anyway, a right-wing Republican.
We're trying to forget.
There's only so much that will fit
he was
in this
the Trump.
tiny
He was
brain.
definitely he was to the right of Trump.
Exactly, but now we have a good person as governor of Maine, and she, I think, isn't it a woman? Signed
Janet Mills, isn't it?
Yes, thank you. Yes, between the two of us, we can.
And so between the two of them,
She signed a law mandating coverage of pre-existing conditions, especially important as Trump's about to destroy the national law. And this will include people with HIV, people with gender dysphoria. All of these people can be covered under whatever their health coverage is.
For the past governor, I want to say Paul LePage. Could that be right?
It was LePage,
all right.
And it could be Paul.
You'll tell us. As Maine goes, so goes the nation.
Don't feel you have to flood us with these emails. We'll catch up eventually.
As Maine goes, so goes the nation.
Yeah.
In Utah, they banned abortion after 18 weeks, setting up a legal challenge.
Oh, that's another national story. Our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, Christian evangelist, announced that the Trump administration is reimposing and expanding the gag rule in federal funding of international organizations. If they have anything, if they whisper the word abortion, no money from the United States. And when reporters said, a reporter pointed out to Mr. Pompeo that many groups that work on global health care issues argue that the policy of not funding leads to more pregnancies among rural women, because this, of course, outlaws contraceptives, too. Researchers have found that funding cuts affect groups that promote contraception use and other pregnancy prevention methods. Mr. Pompeo said, they're just wrong.
God.
Science and action.
That's his answer for everything. Yeah. In Alabama, probate judges recognized an aborted fetus as a person, giving the fetus the rights to sue the formerly pregnant woman and the abortion clinic after the would-be father sued on the fetus's behalf.
Also in Alabama, the Senate, by a vote of 26-0, approved a law outlawing marriage licenses or ceremonies performed by probate judges who don't want to be part of it. But now what you do is you do whatever you do privately. You bring a letter to the probate judge saying, we are now married.
And you don't have to have any ceremony. You just essentially sign an affidavit saying we're married.
And the probate judge has to sign it.
So
what's the difference between issuing a marriage license and signing this? And what are these people going to do when they go out of state and want their marriage recognized somewhere? Is this going to be good enough for other states or the federal government or anybody to recognize these?
Right. I mean, there was a time they didn't recognize Boston marriages. Those were between two women who lived together in the 19th century, early 20th century.
Yeah.
All right. So
let's go to Georgia and the prom.
Okay.
In Georgia,
is this Gainesville?
No, it's Johnson High School in Georgia. Dex Fryer.
I have a picture there.
Dex Fryer, a young trans man, was nominated for prom king. And the school said, no, you cannot run for prom king because you are trans and we will not recognize you as a man or a boy. So the good news is they changed the system. They just had an election among a group of people of all gender.
To be prom representative.
Prom royalty.
Well, I had this down. Maybe they changed it after that.
Dex was one of two people elected as Royal Knight. Knight.
You know, the superintendent of the school, when the super first nixed Dex doing this, said, I don't want any controversy, so you can't do it. You can't run as for prom king. And then, of course, it became an international controversy.
In Indiana, I think we've told you that they were moving towards gender-neutral IDs. In fact, they decided to do that. Yeah, but we've done that in the last couple of weeks. But the Republicans are now trying to block that in the legislature. They're trying to pass a law to forbid that.
Well, why would they do that? Do they hate us?
Yes.
All right. In
California,
you can go
Oliver Knight.
Sure.
Oliver Knight is a trans man who was scheduled for surgery at St. Joseph's Hospital to have a hysterectomy. But at the last minute, when on the operating table, there's Oliver, They came to him and said, nope, we're not going to do your hysterectomy. We are a Catholic hospital, and the Archdiocese has told us that we cannot do your hysterectomy. Which
Outrageous.
was kind of devastating for Oliver.
Got the operation eventually, but at a faraway place.
Yes, had to go much farther. Yes, the good news is that he eventually got the surgery.
Well, speaking of...
But this is a hospital system that has a lot of hospitals around the country. And a lot of the hospitals around the country are Catholic hospitals that operate by these religious rules. And they can be the only alternative for health care in a community.
It's an outrage.
It is.
An outrage. Speaking of Catholic outrages at Roncalli High School, this is a place that had fired a lesbian teacher before for getting married to a woman, and now they fired
back in Indiana.
They fired a guidance counselor because she's in a same-sex marriage, Lynn Starkey. She has filed a discrimination suit. She's been a teacher for 39 years. She was Teacher of the Year, but God forbid she should say, I do and I love you to another woman.
Well, I think that's exactly what they're claiming. God forbid.
Wow. And then, should we talk,
Take your pick.
Well, let's go back to California.
Yeah.
Palm Springs, at Toucan's nightclub, a gay bar, Sunday morning, there was a double shooting, and the injuries turned out not to be life-threatening, and it's not being investigated as a hate crime. It stemmed from an argument. Shots were fired in the parking lot, and for those of you interested, the bar is open.
Also in California, they are proposing a bill that would make the state the first in the nation to ban involuntary intersex surgery, to give people a chance to grow to adulthood or some age of consent before surgery is performed on them, because traditionally what happens is the parents are told, there's something wrong with your baby, we need to do corrective surgery. No matter what their DNA says or what their eventual gender identity is, we're going to automatically make them, their penis is too short, so we're just going to cut it off and make them a girl no matter what. And then they grow up and they say, where's my penis?
Right.
But the people who are objecting to this bill are a lot of doctors, because they say parents should have the ability, because otherwise, they're trying to do something good for their child. I think you ought to think about that again.
Yes. I have another Catholic story and another Leo Varadkar story.
Okay.
There's a Catholic leader in New York named Father George Rutler, and he's the pastor on the EWTN network, Global Catholic Network. He slammed Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, for publicly living in contempt of the sacrament of holy matrimony. Varadkar is, by the way, set to marry Matthew Barrett, his partner.
Do you think that will satisfy this Catholic leader?
Well, this guy was asked...
I don't think so.
This guy was asked, well, what about the drop of worshippers in Ireland? Isn't that due to the priest scandals? He said, no, that was peripheral. That was peripheral. It's from a lack of leadership from the priests out there. They're too soft.
It's astonishing that these people get quoted in the newspaper. Why are reporters talking to these people?
Right. Well, why are they? Why is the church employing people who are this idiotic and hateful?
Here's a story that actually implicates a lot of things. In Midland, Michigan, headquarters of Dow Chemical, they announced that they're doing some splitting up of the company, and the new CEO of Dow Chemical is an out gay man, Jim Fitterling, following Tim Cook as the, second biggest LGBT chief executive. Now, there's a lesbian who's the head of Land O'Lakes, and another lesbian who's the head of something else, but this is considered big. But now everyone said, oh, pinkwashing, Dow Chemical, napalm.
Well, all right.
Take your pick.
Some justice in West Virginia. We told you about, I guess it was last year, this assistant principal who made a transgender sophomore, trans man sophomore, use a urinal in front of him. He's out of a job, this guy in Harrison County. The Board of Education there voted not to renew. His name was Lee Livengood's contract. he had followed Michael Critchfield into the boys' room at this Liberty High School and shouted, "You freaked me out." So now the ACLU, and you've got to pee in front of the, let me see you pee in the urinal. So the ACLU was still fighting for safer conditions at the school.
He can't go in the stall?
Well, no, because you're not supposed to be in this room unless you've got a penis, basically. That was basically the assistant principals. He did write a little letter of apology to Michael. "I'm sorry, Michael, I'd like to keep my job, even though I'm crazy." I mean, Michael was freaked out because it was being yelled at and
I would think
told
so.
to,
Interesting new statistics from a survey by the Public Religious Research Institute that everybody in the country supports LGBT.
Mormons, Muslims, independents, Southerners, and seniors have been on the rise, increasing steadily. But there is an outlier.
There is. Young Republicans, even though they still support
Under 30.
us,
I mean,
under 30.
You
Young,
can be a young Republican until you're 65, but this is under 30.
They still support us 64%, but it used to be 73%. So the analysis of why support is dropping among Republicans under 30 is that more progressive Republicans are leaving the party.
Sure.
So the ones that are left are less so, but still 64% of them support us. They also found in doing this survey that Seattle reported the most LGBT people, 10% of the population, and right behind them at 9% were Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas, and that the U.S. number of people self-reporting as LGBT plus is 5%. I always think that is a very low number because of the people who don't want to report themselves to a telephone survey.
And the survey also found that we're up to now 62% of Americans supporting same-sex marriage. The highest ethnic group supporting us?
I know the answer. You go ahead.
Asian Pacific Islanders at 75%.
And the explanation for that is that the Asian Pacific Islanders in the survey had higher education levels than other
Yes, that's
groups.
because they're letting them all into Stuyvesant High School and they're keeping black kids out.
Hey.
That's a local story.
In Kansas, less good news, the House of Representatives there rejected a sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression non-discrimination law, 61 to 58, achingly close.
Kansas, that's great though, that we got that close, and that they had a vote, so we know where everybody stands.
Yes.
Another survey. This is I am announcing that I am a nun. People claiming no religious affiliation are called nuns now.
Oh.
And
Not N-U-N.
Yes,
you confused me.
That is now 23% of the population, up from 21.5% in 2016. Evangelicals are at 21.6, Catholics are at 23. So the people who are saying they have no affiliation are above those. And nuns are not necessarily, they skew young and liberal, but they don't
old.
vote in the same percentages as evangelicals, who are old and conservative. And not all nuns are agnostic or atheist.
Well, we're old and we vote.
Yeah, we do. But,
All right, they've evidently completed the autopsy on Timothy Dean, the second person found dead in the home of Ed Buck, the Democratic donor in L.A., and Timothy, as suspected, died of a meth overdose. It's unclear whether they're going to bring any charges against Ed Buck.
his friend said that this guy who died was not a drug user or alcohol kind of stuff.
Well,
we don't know.
Ed Buck's story was that he had not imbibed at his house, that he came in loaded on crystal meth, and therefore he's not responsible. Now, this is many people have been found with drug paraphernalia at Ed Buck's house. Certainly the families of the two guys who have died there are suing him in civil cases, but no charges brought by the authorities.
You know, in Arkansas and Tennessee, they have these laws that you can't have local gay laws, local gay rights laws. Well, Texas was moving on such a bill, and it made some progress, but I am told by a viewer in Florida that it is now gone. I hope so.
All right, Charles Rhines on death row in South Dakota, a gay man convicted of a killing.
Horrible killing.
It was a horrible killing, and no one's arguing with his conviction. But he was given the death penalty, and it was not a premeditated murder, which is usually where the distinction lies between death penalty and not. And so he has been appealing his death penalty sentence because the jurors, it turns out, had lengthy conversations about the fact that they knew he was a gay man, and they didn't want to give him a life sentence in prison because they didn't want to give him the pleasure of being locked up with other men.
This is the way people think.
This was, when you read the transcript of some of these comments, it's mind-blowing that they would sit there and discuss how they would be doing him a favor if they gave him a life sentence because jail would be such a playground for him, or prison. So that's why they condemned him to death. So he has been appealing this. He has not had any success yet, but his appeal is now going to the Supreme Court. And
April 12th.
April 12th, they're going to consider whether or not to take the case. But amicus briefs have been filed by the NAACP on his behalf, GLBT advocates and defenders in Boston, HRC, Lambda Legal, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, and the ACLU. They have a powerful phalanx of people defending Charles Rhines because this is so outrageous, but we'll see whether the Supreme Court will take the case.
I guess the Southern Poverty Law Center, which often gets involved in death penalty cases, didn't. They're mired in scandal these days. Co-founder Morris Deese was fired back on March 13th, and now the president, Richard Cohen there, resigned, exposed for being an almost all-white group at the top, even though it's supposed to be doing racial justice stuff, and turning a blind eye to sexual harassment. You know, to me, they were always more about fundraising than they were about work. You got so many solicitations if you gave them $10.
Well, I would say they were certainly expert at fundraising, but they also did a lot of work.
Well, they were founded by somebody essentially who did direct mail.
And yeah, but they won some huge judgments against both the Ku Klux Klan and the Posse Comitatus group in Idaho, and essentially put a lot of people out of business on the far right wing.
Well, they're not going to be out of business. They have more than $500 million in assets.
No, I'm talking about the right wingers they put out of business with their work.
No. I mean Southern Poverty Law Center. I mean, I'm saying that they still have a lot of money, but they ought to operate. They ought to practice what they preach.
Well, the New York City LGBT Center has some controversy too. They rent out rooms to all sorts of people and groups and stuff, and purport to be fairly neutral about that with some exceptions. But they rented a room recently to a group called #Walkaway. And this group advertised itself as Republicans who were asking gay Democrats to walk away from the Democratic Party on the grounds that the Democratic Party was racist and violent and
used to be
lying.
Back in the 19th century.
Well, come on. So people got up in arms about this and said, that walkaway group, they're alt-right. They're like the Charlottesville marchers. They're Proud Boy types. They are just out to bring violence and chaos, and we object to your renting the room to them. They don't meet your standards. And the center defended themselves for a while and said, we are content neutral. We're not discriminating. But finally, things just started to collapse around them. Groups were canceling their meetings there. Groups were saying they felt unsafe there. And the center changed its mind and canceled the walkaway group.
Center is not covered by the Trump executive order on free speech.
I don't know that they get federal funds, but I don't know that they don't, so I'll check that. I also want to say that the Reclaim Pride group, of which I am an active member, is, by the time you see this, we'll already have had our meeting tonight, our open community meeting. But one thing we're going to talk about, and I can't give you an answer now, but we are close to making an agreement with the NYPD about a march route for June 30th. I hope to have a final answer for you next week. It's exciting.
So that means if you come to New York for all the festivities, you don't have to get involved. You can go to, of course, to the quote unquote big parade with all the corporation floats and everything that's going to take probably literally 15 hours.
Well, we were at a meeting last night where they said yes, it's a 9-hour march usually, but we're going to have more people this year, so it's going to be longer.
So we're gonna meet in the village someplace. We're gonna figure it out. March uptown to the park if we can, and if it's all set.
Well, all that looks good. It's just the time.
Well, we don't know.
They want us to do it early. We want to do it a little later.
You all know Andrew Rannells, who was on Girls, and he's was on Broadway in Book of Mormon. He has a new memoir out called Too Much Is Never Enough, and he reveals in this that when he went to confession. Now, when you go to confession in the modern world these days, it's not through the screen. You sit there with the priest. And the priest jumped Father Dominic, jumped him and forced his tongue down his throat. And this was not the only time this happened. This is back in Nebraska. Father Dominic also did it to Andrew on graduation day.
Oh my God.
And he thought, is this guy doing this to all the kids? I mean, now he's speaking out.
Well, as long as you brought it up, I was going to save this for entertainment news, but I saw a movie that opened in New York this week and is going to open in LA shortly called Working Woman. It's an Israeli film. It's not LGBT, but it's, as the press agent said to me, it's intersectional.
Okay.
Well, it's a woman who goes to work for a real estate company in near Tel Aviv, and her boss forces himself on her repeatedly, starting with a kiss and escalating. And I look at this and I think, don't these guys, why do they persist when they've been pushed away, rejected?
It's a challenge.
They just oblivious. You want
Resistance
me? We'll
makes
be good
them
together.
hotter. What else can be the explanation?
It's Working Woman is the name of the movie.
It's
and
illegal.
It's quite interesting.
All right. We going into national news?
We are.
All right.
In Canada, unlike the United States, the Canadian Armed Forces are welcoming trans troops and just issued updated guidelines about how to welcome and support trans troops. Thank you, Canada.
Okay.
In Kenya, a court of appeals has affirmed a high court order that an LGBT group can register as a government-sanctioned, non-governmental organization.
That's huge.
Yes, it is, in Kenya.
And it was a 3-2 decision.
Yeah.
The judge said the group exists, and we can no longer deny that. In Thailand, we have the first LGBT person elected to the parliament, name of Gulf Suk Hop Isit, 45 years old, from the Future Forward Party. That's a breakthrough in Thailand. They haven't even had elections there in a long time.
Film director, well-known film director in Thailand, identifies as bisexual and non-binary. Congratulations. Anyone named Golf is good with us.
Canada is issuing new policies to welcome trans troops. Maybe
as I just said.
You just said it. You got that. Well, we're rushing, so.
Perhaps you were looking at the decision from Canada where the government says it doesn't like conversion therapy, but they're not going to pass a national law. It's local option. So if you want to outlaw conversion therapy, you have to do it territory by territory, province by province.
Help me say the capital of the country of Georgia.
Tbilisi.
Tbilisi will have its first Pride event June 18th to 23rd of June. There's a small LGBT demo there that met violence in 2013. Now the equality movement, for that is what it is called, is opening up a cafe gay bar, and they're making moves. They're going to stage, now here's what they're going to do for Pride. They're going to stage a March of Dignity, not a festive event, because they feel LGBT people have little to celebrate in Georgia today.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, that's part of the impetus behind Reclaim Pride's Queer Liberation March. It's not that we don't have things to celebrate, but we have a lot to be concerned about, and we want to keep those issues in the forefront and not just have a party that's meaningless.
Yeah.
In Japan, the Justice Ministry, in a good move, has canceled a deportation order for a gay Taiwanese man who has been in a long-term relationship of 25 years with a Japanese man. But because they have no legal standing as a couple, the Taiwanese man was going to be deported. But now the government has changed its mind. It's going to recognize the relationship and cancel the deportation.
Right. In
bad news from Japan, they have decided that trans people must, to be recognized as changing their gender marker, remove their reproductive organs, surgically change their genitals, be single, and have no children.
Yeah, it's a very
minor children.
It's a very conservative society. In the United Kingdom, there was an actress set to play Celie in The Color Purple musical. She was fired for old Facebook posts saying homosexuality is unnatural and not right. Her name is Sei Omubu, and she was cast as Celie in the production set for Leicester in Birmingham. The character is a lesbian.
Yes.
A Hamilton actor, Aaron Lee Lambert, saw the post and called her out for her hypocrisy, and she wouldn't back down. And yet she was going to go play this lesbian.
Did she not back down? I didn't read what she said.
Well, she's fired, so unless there's been unless Pete Buttigieg has gone over and effected a reconciliation, I don't think.
Yeah, well, listen to this. She's the daughter of an anti-LGBT pastor who promotes conversion therapy and was awarded an MBE.
Right, that's right.
Member of the British Empire.
Right.
All right. In Germany, Germany wants to expel the U.S. ambassador, Richard Grenell.
Yes, we talked about that last week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
They say he interferes in local affairs and he's acting like an occupying power.
Like a fascist. There's something called the World Happiness Report that found that 9 of the 10 happiest countries in the world have legal protections for LGBTQ people. There are places like Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Holland, Switzerland, Sweden, New Zealand, Canada, and Austria. But Switzerland is the one that doesn't have such great protections for us.
We have told you long ago that Brunei was talking about toughening up their laws. Well,
they're doing it.
It's coming to pass. Next week, April 3rd, they're expected to pass a law allowing for the whipping and stoning to death of LGBTQ people.
Stoning to death.
It's going to take effect next week.
Stoning to death.
Yeah. We know it happens other places,
but
not many places are instituting those laws, but Brunei is one of them.
Well, it's usually a leader, trying to shore up support among a crazy populace, like what goes on in the United States these days.
In Costa Rica, the president is promising to institute legal same-sex marriage before the May 2020 deadline. Thank you.
China is cutting 6 LGBT moments from Bohemian Rhapsody, so see it here while you can.
As I have said, that's the entire LGBTQ content of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
AIDS material, too, was muted in the movie. In the House of Commons in the UK says don't detain LGBT asylum seekers, they're in danger. Japan, a young woman who's a lesbian, who's a soccer player on the national soccer team, there she is, Shiho Yamada, has come out.
She said, once you share your feelings with the company you keep, sports will become even more fun, she said.
And this is in anticipation of the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
All right.
And they have a Pride House. AIDS news.
Well, there was that man in Sydney who tested positive for HIV using PrEP on demand before and after sexual encounters, and he got infected. And so people are questioning whether, was he adherent enough in doing this, but it did raise some questions about using this PrEP on demand system.
Yeah, probably constant.
And you should use condoms anyway because STIs are on the rise.
Gilead is raising the prices on all HIV drugs, but they're also announcing that Descovy is better for PrEP than Truvada, fewer side effects. But Truvada's going off patent in 2021, which may be one reason Gilead is now promoting Descovy instead.
The U.S. owns the patent. We're not bringing the price down. All right.
All right. Entertainment news. You have Kelly O'Hara and Will Chase and Kiss Me Kate.
Look, This is Kiss Me Kate, Cole Porter, Kelly O'Hara, and Will Chase, and Corbin Bleu. One of the great scores of all time. I'm just going to say go. It's a wonderful show. Scott Ellis directs.
Harvey Fierstein is writing and playing a solo show as Bella Abzug. Bella.
Battling Bella, set in her ill-fated 1976 run for U.S. Senate when she lost to Moynihan by like a point.
This will be at the Manhattan Theater Club October 1st.
Two gay icons.
Yeah. April 2nd on the Smithsonian Channel, America's Hidden Secrets. The general was female. This is about General Casimir Pulaski, George Washington's general, Polish, cavalry commander. Was he cross-dressing? Was he intersex? Was he what? They've unearthed his skeleton and done some DNA testing.
His general in charge of training the troops was von Steuben, who was gay. Was thrown out of Germany because he was gay.
Smithsonian Channel, April 8th. Sorry.
All right. Nathan Westling, once the supermodel Natalie Westling for Marc Jacobs, Louis Vuitton, Versace, all those, has come out as transgender. It was a tough transition, he says, but always felt that modeling was cool because you got to play a character, and now is getting jobs as being accepted by the old sponsors.
You and Rob last week mentioned the contestant Georgie on American Idol as being sort of flamboyantly out gay. Well, he got cut.
All right. Will and Grace, where are we on this?
Will and Grace.
Yeah, Will and Grace. So the Karen Walker character, Megan Mullally, has apparently always joked about being bisexual, never had a relationship with a woman. Now Samira Wiley's Nikki character is having an on-screen thing with Karen. It took only 20 years for that kiss to happen.
Well, Karen did joke about it. She was always kissing Grace or kissing Jack or everybody, but Nikki comes on to her and just goes in for the kiss, and Karen likes it.
The second season of Pose is going to feature Patti LuPone and Madonna.
Oh, thank
It's going to be
heavens.
directed by trans journalist Janet Mock, gay Billy Porter, who's on the show, and writer Our Lady J.
This weekend is your last chance to catch the Warhol show at the Whitney Museum, including this portrait of Marsha P. Johnson that Warhol did.
The Stonewall activist. Rosie O'Donnell has revealed in an interview about a book on The View that she was sexually abused by her father as a child. She said, "You feel completely powerless and stuck because the person you need to tell is the person doing it." Her dad died in 1981. She says she forgave him, but that's a new revelation.
And then she also talked about having had a little crush on Elizabeth Hasselbeck, and Elizabeth Hasselbeck came on the show this week to complain about that and call it sexual harassment.
To have a crush?
To have a crush.
Yeah, we can't help who our crushes are.
For
We just
God's
don't want to
sake.
impose them on others.
Yeah, and claimed that she was stereotyping female athletes by saying that Elizabeth, who was an athlete in her youth, might have had a crush back on her. Elizabeth was very offended.
Are we down to just that? You've got to be kidding.
Yeah. And next week on April 1st, Monday, a celebration of the life of Brian Butterick, also known as Hattie Hathaway, starts with a drag march at Tompkins Square Park, moves to a memorial event at La Mama. That is going to be a riotous affair.
And Barbra Streisand destroyed her career this week defending Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
she
that was
apologized.
ugly.
And we'll tell you more.
She said, they're alive. They got married. It didn't hurt them.
Yeah, they got married, meaning they're normal.
Yeah.
You know?
Whatever.
And we're going to tell you about a new Netflix series next week about a gay man with cerebral palsy.
All right. Well, we've crammed it all in this week. That's all the time we have. We will see you next week. Thank you for joining us.